every bad show is bad for a reason. Somebody screwed it up. Someone did something they shouldn't have done.
I got a few things to work on.
Yeah, well,
as a human being, it's always good, I think, to try to be the best version of yourself. At least a little bit, a fraction of percent every day. So I'm trying. How about you? How's life over in the West Coast?
Things are great. We are, during the pandemic, we ramped up, and so, we've got 7 hours of Space Command recorded and 7 more to go to finish the first season. And I'm creating the new show with Rock Neoban and tons of stuff. And just finished the new book. Here's the new book.
Oh, what do we got here?
It's called Greenlighting Yourself. And it will be published by Silman James as soon as I send it to them. And it's about how to do all the stuff I've done. It's how writers and directors and actors and producers can, basically be the catalyst to make stuff happen rather than waiting for the studios and networks. And
yeah, because that's usually what it is in the business, as they call it, is you're waiting for permission to be creative. But you don't have, in this day and age, you don't have to wait. You can start yourself, which is where Space Command came from, really. You wanted to put out this new universe that you created, this sci-fi story, and it's big, it's epic, it's a saga, and you decided to do it. You're not going to wait. You're going to start you're going to do a Kickstarter. You're going to get fans involved.
That's right.
How did that process go? Because it's still, it's a big great Kickstarter, but now you got the first pilot, and you got so many more episodes.
I know, it's really cool. Like here's the Blu-rays that people can order right now. I mean, Space Command Redemption's the 2-hour pilot, and Space Command Forgiveness is episode 3 and 4. So it's pretty cool. And so we're plugging in the visual effects. The first 2 hours have 1,800 visual effects shots.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, the Blu-ray is going to include like behind-the-scenes stuff. It's going to include a tribute to Mira Furlin, whom we lost sadly to West Nile virus, but she's brilliant in Space Command as she was in Babylon 5. And but the thing is that thanks to the fans around the world, I didn't have to go hand in hand to Paramount or something and have them come up with really wacky ideas that wrecked it. It's like I mean. Every bad show is bad for a reason. Somebody screwed it up. Someone did something they shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
In order for something to be good, everyone along the food chain has to do their job, not just well, but superlatively well.
Absolutely.
A good film or a great TV show, it's a series of correct decisions along the way. And so in this case, my fans over time have given me over $2 million between selling investment shares for $7,500 each and doing a Kickstarter campaign. And that's allowed us to open a studio, record all this Space Command material, plus we're almost done with the sets for the alien spaceship, and we're building 2 8-foot-tall creatures. And we're going to roll camera in the next few months on that, and that'll be the second part of Redemption. But we've already started filming little bits and pieces of it, of Forgiveness, of the second story. And then during the pandemic, we did a 2-hour bonus episode where our actors shot their own scenes and in their own homes, so no one would get COVID. And that was great. That was great fun with Armin Shimmerman and Christina Moses and Bob Picardo and even Mira, before she fell ill, was in that. And thank God for that. I mean, we were able to any performance by Mira is a blessing to have.
Absolutely.
So
it was a very sad loss. I mean, I felt that I was working with Patricia Tallman at the time, and then I was chatting with her about the loss of a very dear friend.
Yes.
And then I'm also thinking, wait, Mira is also a part of Space Command. How is the loss of she wasn't just a dynamite person, but she was a big, important role in Space Command.
She was going to be one of the 2 viewpoint characters. Space Command takes place over 180 years of a future chronology with these 4 families that we follow throughout the adventure. And she and Doug Jones, Doug's a synthetic human, and Mira was a genetically altered human. And so the 2 of them were going to be the viewpoint characters who didn't age over the course of the 180 years. Now, of course, we've had to rethink Mira's role. Fortunately, we've shot enough where we can have a good finale to her character. But one thing that was very interesting is we also wrote a prequel, which was done as an audio play and it's being done as a graphic novel, and we're combining them into what's called an animatic, which is like an animated storyboard. And we have just finished doing the part with Mira, and so we're going to be publishing the second issue of the Space Command comic. Will be a special Mira Furlin issue, and
awesome.
it's going to be really. I'm really glad that we'll be able to do it. Tahani Farr is the artist, and she really is able to capture Mira, and then it's so. I mean, so again, I first met Mira Furlin when I wrote for Babylon 5, and I was so impressed with her then. Yeah. And I thought, gosh, I've got to work with her again, as whenever I can. And Space Command provided the opportunity. I'm so glad that we did that. But she was also going to be in Sweet Haven, the show I'm creating with Rockney O'Bannon, and she and Bob Picardo were going to play a married couple. And sadly, in that case, we had to recast the role that Mira was going to play with. It's Krista Martell, Krista Martell, who played Marta Kristen. Sorry, I'm getting it backwards. Marta Kristen, who played Judy on the original Lost in Space, and so she'll be playing the wife of Bob Picardo, and Gates McFadden's in that too, and Veronica Cartwright and Michael Harney. Just an amazing cast. So
yeah, it sounds like some great sci-fi alum.
Yes. Well, it's funny because these are incredibly talented actors who are generally so underutilized, and so I'm just looking for ways to work with people who are terrific, and this is a great way of doing it, and so that's the only reason I'm doing it, because I'm a fan of their work, but also they really can deliver. Yeah,
absolutely. And it kind of feels like, things are changing, but for a couple decades, the classic sci-fi type stories were very underutilized. Yes. And it seems like there's been a resurgence. You have Space Command is classic sci-fi.
Yes.
But updated to sensibilities of today. Yes. I see. Of course, the Orville is borrowing from classic sci-fi, and there's other shows that are coming out, movies coming out that are telling more human stories. I see a lot, and this is the case with Space Command, is stories that deal with the importance or the morality or the ethics with artificial life.
Yes.
Their rights and things like that.
Well, I think it's the one thing you can do that's great when you have synthetic humans or something along those lines, or an AI, is that you can have a consciousness that's separate from humanity and separate from human wiring. And in other words, a lot of the reasons we have wars and all these crazy things are we were wired up when we were like, primates living in trees or whatever. And so the only two main questions were, who's part of our group and who's out to kill us, and so that wiring is still strongly there, even though our world no longer really is suited to that very, very core wiring, and it leads to war. It leads to all sorts of crazy, useless things that if the world were sane, we have enough to feed everybody. We have enough to give everyone housing and doctor care and all of that. But our crazy wiring impedes that. So it's fun to have a character who's not wired up that way, so he can look at humanity and say, well, here's the good and here's the bad and so forth, without making a speech of it. And Doug Jones has such a great soul as a person. He's an amazing guy. That wonderful quality of soul fit the character of Dorn Nevin perfectly. I wrote that role for him, and he's wonderful in it.
Yeah, and his character, and this goes along with anything I've seen of Doug Jones, whether it be roles or interviews or anything, there's a sweetness to him, and so there's a sweetness to the character it automatically endears him to you.
Yes, he's charming and funny, and your heart just goes out to him, and it was so great. I told him when I first had lunch with him, that I was going to write a role for him where we would see his real face, because he has such a sensitive face that it's such a shame that in so many roles it's covered up and you don't get to see it.
Heavily covered up in most cases.
Yeah, most it's like so I'm really glad that we got the honor of doing that. It's terrific, and again, there's a lot more to come. We're just totally firing on all cylinders now, and then it's just finding the money. And this isn't to say that we aren't, we're in conversation now with Amazon and Netflix and a lot of the other platforms, but it's finding the right sensibility that's not going to that's not going to
because then people that see see that universe that you've created the same way, or they get it, which which we know is so hard to do. And when you get too many people wanting to get their hands into something and have their say, it's like it's a horse by committee, which ends up looking like a camel.
Yeah, and then, and Space Command is now part of something I'm creating called the Showrunners Network, where I'm creating 6 shows with 6 major showrunners. So that includes Rockne O'Bannon, who created Farscape and Defiance. It includes Marc Ferguson and Hawk Ostby, who developed The Expanse for television and ran that show, and Joe Dougherty, who was the executive producer on Pretty Little Liars. And there's a Rod Serling project also that I'm currently talking to the Serling family about. So we'll see, but the idea would be we would shoot all 6 2-hour pilots and then take it as a slate to the buyers, where they would buy all 6 shows. No one's ever done it, but the idea is this is curated content made by your favorite science fiction showrunners. And so that, people have created some of the greatest shows of the last few decades. And so we'll see how that goes, but so far so good. Rock and I, laid out the first show, Sweet Haven, and we've had 2 table reads with Gates McFadden and Bob Picardo and all of our cast. And my wife and I wrote the script, and it's great. It's really great fun. So we'll see where it all goes, but so far so good.
And is Sweet Haven, is that a CW project, or it was at one point? No,
I did a pilot for the CW just before the pandemic. A friend brought me in on it, and it was a fun script, but very, very, very out there. And but Sweet Haven, oddly, it was an idea that Rock and I came up with before the pandemic. And the idea is a bioengineered disease gets out of hand and kills everyone in the world under 60. So the people 60 and above have to figure out how to save the world when they can't reproduce. And so, I really want to do something that would, because I'm so tired of seeing older people, stereotyped as either they're coming down with Alzheimer's, or they're coming down with cancer, or they're the funny grandpa or grandma.
Yeah.
When the older people I know are incredibly active, incredibly creative, incredibly in the world in a committed way. And that's very rarely presented as such, particularly for older actresses. And so that was why Rock and I very much wanted to do this, and I started writing it because Mike Harney, who appears in Space Command, is a dear friend, and he's a terrific actor, but he rarely gets utilized as fully as he could be. So in Sweet Haven, he plays a homicide cop, and he also has a brother who's less than admirable. And Mike will be playing both roles, which will be very, very fun. And Gates McFadden will also be playing 2 roles, and so it involves a romance between the 2 of them, and so that's going to be very, very fun. And so we'll be shooting that this year as well. That's very much in the cards.
And that type of thing is so appealing to me. That type of storyline, those what-if situations, always appeal to me. That's why I like, like Bird Box with who was that? That was
Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock. There you go. Sandy B. Where it's like you can't see, you have to cover your eyes, or you're not saying this is a horror genre at all that you're dealing with, but A Quiet Place, which part 2 comes out this weekend. You have to be very quiet. I love those what-if situations in a world where,
Yeah, well, it's fun. It's fun. One thing that's great with science fiction and horror and fantasy is you can basically break the machine that runs the world and see what happens. You can set up different rules. When I wrote the Magic Time trilogy of novels, it was like all the machines in the world stop running and magic comes back, and it was super fun. And certain people turned into sort of these mythical archetypal creatures, but still with their knowledge, with their personalities. And that's one of the 6 shows we're going to be doing as part of the Showrunners Network. And it was based on a pilot Elena and I wrote that got optioned 8 times. And and Christina Moses is going to be playing a role, and Armin Shimmerman. And it just it's just huge fun, because you look at the world through those different eyes of, okay, if this happened, what would this look like? And really fun. I love doing that.
Well, with Space Command, you created a whole new universe. It's what's considered a utopian future, at least on Earth, which most utopian futures is Earth has got everything, got their stuff together, but there's dangers and stuff to go out there in space that you have to deal with. So I'm sure a lot of people watching right now are full fans of Space Command, but for anyone that's just tuning in now, what is the Space Command universe and series bringing us?
Well, Star Trek, the original Star Trek came out when I was 10, and it was a hopeful vision of the future, despite the Vietnam War, despite, the riots in the cities and all the civil rights movement, all of that stuff. It was saying we can make a better future. The future is in our hands. And and if you cannot present to your children, you cannot live with the idea that the future is going to be worse and there's nothing we can do about it, because the moment you do that, you totally, you're no longer taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to create something that would present a hopeful vision of the future that could inspire people the way Star Trek inspired me, without being, Pollyannish or rose-colored glasses, but just really saying, look, if we reach across boundaries and barriers with compassion and empathy and action, we can fight the forces that would destroy us, the forces that would keep us apart in fear. And frankly, one can say, well, this was the perfect time for that, but any time is the perfect time for that. Because, because again, the future that we live in now, if you look back at the time of Star Trek, the future that we assumed we would be in, we have a lot of the bells and whistles. We have the internet. We have these incredibly powerful computers in our pockets. We can talk to anyone instantaneously anywhere in the world. But still, there are people going hungry. There are people suffering. There's still a lot to be done. And I think it'll always be that way. But as opposed to certain very dark shows that say, well, we're screwed, my attitude is no. I think the future will always be a mixture of bad and good. But we can tip the scales a little bit. We can do our part. We can't necessarily change the world, but we can change part of it. We can change some of it. And in aggregate, there are millions of us. I think there are more good people than bad people. And I think more people want to be a productive force in this world than not, And again, that's why I'm very pleased when someone, like I'm very politically liberal, but I'm very pleased when someone who's very politically conservative is a big fan of Space Command 2, because this is not about politics. It's about compassion and empathy. It's about, and that should, I mean, the only race that really matters is the human race.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the race we're all part of. And the moment we understand that, it doesn't matter black or white, Palestinian or Jew, any of that. Is someone suffering? Is someone getting a raw deal? Is someone being treated badly just because of what they, what their background is, or what, no. I mean, everyone just wants to wake up and not be screwed with,
Yeah. Well, with all the information we have, we constantly hear about all the bad things going on.
Yes.
We have nonstop access to that. So you become numb to it, or you become defensive about things. You're tired of hearing about these bad things. One thing I love about sci-fi, especially classic sci-fi, which really has done this the best way, and newer shows are borrowing from that, is they'll take a situation that we're going through in our own lives, but they'll apply it to an alien world. Something like that. So you can take yourself out of it and look in.
That's right.
Which, people don't take themselves out of this out of their lives and to look back in and reflect. And sci-fi has allowed me to do that my entire life.
But that's the great part, because science fiction, it's so interesting, the history of science fiction. And again, my Mr. Sci-Fi YouTube channel deals with this a lot, because I also wrote the Twilight Zone Companion, so I go way back. Rod Serling wanted to be a mainstream writer, but he was so censored he couldn't write about politics or race or social issues. So he created the Twilight Zone to sneak it by the censors. And it succeeded. He could write about pretty much anything he wanted to write about. Monsters of Dawn Maple Street is probably the greatest piece of work.
Oh, yeah. The paranoia that people get from...
But the funny thing is that... as a result, instead of his work being dated 50, 60 years later, it's as timely now, because science fiction allows you, by removing it from the moment, the political moment, the social moment, it allows you to be universal, where you can watch stuff for decades later and it still matters, it still resonates. And that's true of the original Star Trek, it's true of any of these things. And so I've written things, I wrote things when I was in my 20s that people are still watching and enjoying now and getting value, emotional value from. And when I was at a Star Trek convention not long ago where they screened Far Beyond the Stars, which is a story I came up with. And it was astonishing, 20 years later, where the cops murder a black kid for trying to break into a car. And, Cisco says, Benny says, that was murder. You murdered him. And to see that in the light of Black Lives Matter, it's like, wow, that wasn't only of its time, it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Even though it was a story set in the 1950s. And so so science fiction can, as you said, science fiction can present the truth in a way that has a very long reach, and that's great. I love science fiction for the same reason. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, I go back to, I mean, my first thing that I delved into was the Twilight Zone as a young kid. Twilight Zone, and that led me to original series reruns of Star Trek, which of course led me to all the other Star Treks, and anything that resembled Star Trek in any way, to get those stories and to learn lessons. And I'll go back and watch an old episode of Twilight Zone or Star Trek or anything like that, and I was like, wow, that applies today to what's going on in this world this second now.
And also, you know, it's funny because those writers had a lot to say, and it wasn't random. Most of those writers on Star Trek and Outer Limits and Twilight Zone had gone through World War II. I mean, Roddenberry was a bomber pilot. Serling was a paratrooper, you know, fighting the Japanese. I mean, these guys faced life and death and really had a depth of soul and a depth of experience that allowed their writing to be informed. And, you know, and I think a lot of writers now are kind of, they watch TV and they make more TV, but they're not really looking at life in a way and commenting from experience beyond just kind of riffing on other TV shows and movies. And so you have to make sure that whatever you do, I'm part of a tradition, and Space Command certainly honors that tradition. I mean, our aesthetic is like 1950s retro science fiction because I love that design aesthetic, and all the characters are named after science fiction writers like, you know, Asimov and Bradbury and so forth, you know, Clifford Simak. But also I'm very much commenting, as you said, on the world now, and the basic notion in Space Command is that you have to recognize that it's not about bad guys and good guys. It's about the actions you are taking and shining a light on what you're doing to say, are you creating harm in the world or good? Because just because you're like an American doesn't necessarily mean you're the good guy. Sometimes you will be, yes, but there's also stuff that's done where you have to say, wait a minute, am I on the right side here? Are these actions representing what I believe in? And again, it's not a political issue. It's an issue of kindness. It's an issue of compassion. It's an issue of how would I feel if I were in that situation on the receiving end of it? And again, I'm not specifically bad-mouthing America. That's the last thing I would want to do. I love democracy. I love the melting pot aspect of America. I love the fact that you can show a photo of anyone. They can be black, white, Eskimo. It doesn't matter. And you say, is this an American? And the answer is most likely yes, because an American is not defined by what they look like or what their belief system is or how they talk. Or, you know, it's like, this is the great dream. The dream of America is real. The promise on the Statue of Liberty is real. But there's also a dark side to America too, the colonialism and all the nonsense we all know about. I mean, you know, Vietnam was not the best idea, you know, in retrospect, you know, but that's, you know, but we're fallible, we're human beings. And so Space Command recognizes that in our characters. And sometimes another thing in Space Command that we deal with is sometimes you do the right thing, but that has a negative consequence that you then have a responsibility to deal with. And that might be generations later, because we're looking at multiple generations in our show. And I mean, it's very funny that Robert Picardo plays Armin Shimmerman's grandfather. they've been laughing about that. And we jump back and forth between the generations, so it's not a straight line, because we see cause and effect. And you know, it's and initially Space Command takes place in our solar system, so the pilot takes place on Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, Ceres, and the moons of the outer planets, and the colonized moons. But then ultimately we jump to the stars, and so then we do go, you know, out of our own system. But it's super fun, and it's very much the universe of shared assumptions that the science fiction writers that I grew up reading were writing about, where Arthur C. Clarke and Heinlein and Bradbury and all of them were writing on the same assumptions. We would land on the moon, we would colonize Mars, we would eventually develop faster than light drive and go out to other solar systems where we would meet alien life. You know, it's like they were all writing within that same extremely optimistic and extremely positive worldview. You know,
it was a we can do this type. It's a message of hope, and with individual stories and all that sci-fi, it's about empathy. And also the greatness that humanity can aspire to, because landing on the moon was something for all of us, for all of humanity. We come in peace for all humanity. That's what they said, and it's wonderful because
I mean, we're the only species, as far as we know, that's looked up at the stars and wondered what those were and decided to go there. Decided to, let's find out. And that curiosity, I think, scientific curiosity. I mean, all that intellectual curiosity of humanity is one of the things that makes us worth existing. It's like it's not all about, can I steal something from my neighbor? Can I, take what's not mine? That's part of it. But the other part of it is, hey, how do quantum physics and relativity work together when they're so
why does that apple fall from the tree, not just stay there?
Well, yeah,
inquisitive nature about
it's great,
the most insane, difficult things imaginable.
Well, when you see that helicopter on Mars, it's like, wow, that's cool. And the video from Mars, I mean, that was just wonderful. And so I'm jazzed by all of that. I'm not, it's like, I don't, there's not a disconnect between my work and my world. The world I live in, the world I create, the world, that I'm part of. I take responsibility for my actions throughout, and I mentor a lot of young people, and and Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry were definitely huge influences on me, and they were optimists and they were moral men, and they they had a lot to say, but they believed in the future. Both of them did, and that's why they were telling those stories that they told.
Well, one big thing about utopian sci-fi, and of course Star Trek is the biggest champion of this, is what happens when we as a people, as a planet of people, we find out we're not alone in the universe, and we pull together because now we know that there's much bigger stuff going on out there and other races and other people. Now in our real life, we're hearing, UFOs are real.
That's amazing. The government admitting that is amazing.
Yeah, there's just stuff out there flying around. We don't know what it is, and it's weird. And then, what's your take on which way humanity might go? Will it be the work together, or be the first to try to push each other out of the way to become friends with UFOs faster than other countries?
It's always going to be a struggle between those two poles. I think this thing about UFOs is wonderful. I mean, I don't know what they are, but they certainly aren't aircraft. God knows. I mean, the way they fly. There's something going on there. It's really amazing. But also the challenge about encountering. I'm sure there's life. I think life is ubiquitous, because if you look at our universe, there's not just one of anything. Everything replicates. Everything replicates. That's why I think there are other universes as well. But intelligent life, that's a very different thing, because when they talk about intelligent life, what they're really talking about is technological intelligent life, which are two different things. You can say a dolphin's intelligent, or whatever, but that's an interesting thing, because we only have, as far as we know, one example, one animal, and so to extrapolate from a one example, you have no idea. Intelligent life I think it'll be extremely different from us. I have no idea what it's going to be like. I hope it's not extremely predatory. We're pretty predatory as a species.
Yeah.
When you see what we've done to this planet, when you see what we've done to like technologically less established groups of people, it's. I mean, it's very funny, because I was listening on a show recently when they were talking about the Air Force and the government, saying UFOs are real, and they're saying, well, why wouldn't they have contacted us? Well, Jesus Christ, look at what we're like.
Yeah, because they watched us first, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to call that person.
Well, when you're looking at a tiger in a cage, you don't think to yourself, well, I think I'll just open that up and say hi. It's like, no. I mean, it's very funny, because when they had the landing on the moon, they asked a number of famous people what they thought the plaque should have said to addressing aliens who might come upon it, and I.F. Stone, who was a very liberal journalist, said that what he would have on the plaque is "run." So, but in Space Command, we will be dealing with aliens that are very unlike human beings, and we'll be exploring those issues of. In some cases, they might be refugees. In some cases, they might be predators. There's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to be exploring, and we've got the entire first season laid out. We've shot, as I said, we've recorded 7 hours of the show, and we're shooting another 7 hours to finish out season 1. And while we're also working on, you know, Rod Serling's After Twilight and Sweet Haven and all the other stuff we're up to. So it's pretty cool.
And you still got the Kickstarter is still in full swing.
Yes, we're absolutely committed to succeeding at it. We're halfway through. We've got I think another 11 days, and we'll get to the finish line. But we've got posters, T-shirts, producer credits, acting roles. In fact, you know, we hear from people all over the world. We even have long distance acting roles where you don't have to come to LA, but you'll be on a view screen or something, and you know we can do that too. So if people want virtual acting roles, and we even have a pre-release copy of my new book, Greenlighting Yourself, and it's got a T-shirt that comes with it. It says on the front it says Greenlighting Yourself, and then on the back it says Marc Zicree's got your back.
Well, if you're a good person, you know, if I need someone to have my back, I'm glad it would be you. So that'd be a good shirt to have, just to remind everybody who's got my back.
Well, I've been, for over 28 years, I've been running a roundtable of writers and directors and actors and producers that meets every Thursday. Now it's meeting on Zoom, of course, and it's thousands of members. We'll be meeting back in person again in the near future, but I created it just to create Hollywood the way I would want it to be, which is supportive, compassionate, non-judgmental, open to anyone with a good heart. And it just grew and grew. And because I don't think, you know, Hollywood gets a bad reputation for terrible behavior and terrible people, but those are just the most visible ones. There's a Hollywood of people who just do their job and do it, you know, wonderfully well, and then they go home to their families and they're good friends, and they're not creeps. And so I wanted to encourage that and let people know who come here that they don't have to become a monster to succeed. You know, and
absolutely. And why would you want to be a monster in order to succeed?
Well, I think some people succeed because they are alpha dogs. It's a very hierarchical industry. And sometimes the people who are the meanest, most assertive, most narcissistic people rise to the top, sadly. And the only thing that keeps them there is if the things they work on make money.
Yeah.
If the things they work on stop making money, then they fall from grace. But as long as they're making millions or billions of dollars for a studio, it's all sort of a license for them to behave badly. Now, fortunately, the Me Too movement has brought some people to task. But you know, again, there's always going to be bad bosses in every industry. But you know, we can just take responsibility for our little corner of the world.
Yeah, or our corner of the universe.
Yes, yes. But this gets back to a hopeful vision, because again, the way you give people hope is by saying there's room for you and you're not alone. You know, you have other people like Marc Zicree's got your back. It's basically with Space Command and what I do in my personal life, you know, Elaine and I have been together for 44 years, married for 43. You know, it's like consistency, you know, what you stand for, who you are. The first writer I ever saw in person was Ray Bradbury when I was 7. He gave a talk at a library, and I sat not in the front row, I sat on the carpet in front of the front row. He was such a hero to me even then. And I remember that Ray in that talk said, ideally, your work and your life and your art should all come from the same place. And I thought, wow, that's great. And that's what I've tried to embody. You know, and Ray, of course, was a dear friend and a mentor for many years. And, you know, so that's what I do with my time.
Well, that's good. I always said I don't care what people say. I care about what they do.
Yes.
Unless, of course, they're a writer. Then I care about what they say.
Yes, yes. And again, you know, the good part about writers is that sometimes the best of them is in their work, and they may be less wonderful in person. It varies. But you know, books are an amazing, miraculous thing. It's telepathy. You know, I can pick up a book by Dickens, and it's his mind speaking to my mind. You know, I mean, it's one way, but it's astonishing.
His thoughts to your thoughts.
yeah. I mean, you know, but and TV is the same way. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing that I can reach around the world, millions of people with what's on my mind. You know, and I love that. And I love collaboration with talented people like Doug and Bob and my VFX guys and my editor, Dave Edison, and on and on. Angelique, my coordinator. I mean, just I bring these really great people together. David Bartlett, who's our physical producer on things, runs our physical studio. And, you know, it's just, I'm not I'm not someone by nature who could stand to be a novelist full time. I've written novels. I learned how to do it, and I like it, but I could never do it full time because I would go crazy from the isolation.
Yeah.
I like collaboration, so you know, I've been very lucky in that way.
Well, the whole lockdown from the pandemic, that's when you have to sit there by yourself. So is that where greenlighting yourself came from?
No,
you had to
oddly
sit
enough,
down and think?
I saw the book just before the pandemic hit. It was I taught a class that I titled it How to Have Your Own Studio, but no one signed up and people didn't want their own studio. So I changed the title to Greenlighting Yourself, and the class was packed. Yeah. And so then I went on Amazon. I thought someone surely must have written a book with this title, and no one had. And so I contacted 2 publishers that I knew, and I said, would you be interested in a book entitled Greenlighting Yourself? And Silman James said yes. And so I sold the book on 2 words, and that's pretty great.
Yeah.
And then I just packed the book with everything I know about how to have a career inside and outside of the box. So here's the way you can do it if you want to work with studios and the networks and major publishers. Here's how you can do it if you don't have access to that but want to make a career for yourself. You know. And so it's fun. It was very, very fun, and I embraced the new technologies. I talk about, you know, I mean, science fiction never dreamed that we would all have video cameras in our pockets. You know, you know, and the fact that you know, anyone can make a movie just with what they've got in their pocket and on their desktop or their laptop. You know, you can make stuff happen. You can get millions of people to watch your work if you create something entertaining. You know, so.
Yeah, and just don't limit yourself. Say you can do it. You got that phone, take it out, start filming. Yeah. Don't talk yourself out of it.
Yes.
And we're communicating through Star Trek technology right now. We're both on our own vessels talking on a view screen.
Yes, I know, it's terrific. But again, one thing I say in the book is anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Because most people are so worried they're going to suck, they don't start. And if you start and you suck, you can get better. But at least you've started. At least you're in motion. I also say that half-assed is better than no ass at all. You know, so it's like you just do it. Get moving. It's like, you know, I mean, many people start out, you know, writing and they're terrible at first, or making a film or whatever. And then you just say, okay, what's bad, what's not working, or you ask your friends and get friends who are supportive and not toxic, but will be honest with you and say, well, you know, you shouldn't probably be acting in your own stuff, and you know, okay, I'll get a better actor or whatever, you know, and that's how things work. You know, it's I think too many people feel that they have to be perfect before they can start, and I don't agree with that at all. You know, so
yeah, well, they say perfection is the enemy of good.
Yes, and also, you know, I love the fact that science fiction is a big tent. I mean, many of us come to science fiction because we're oddballs in one way or another, you know? Yeah. And when I wrote The Twilight Zone Companion, I was very interested in learning how these amazing writers came to exist. And I found out for most of them, for many of them, Charles Beaumont, George Clayton Johnson, they had a childhood illness where they were bedridden for a year or something like that, something that turned them inward into introspection. Where
Just
they couldn't
sit there and think, lay there and think.
Yes, and they discovered books and they became immersed in that fantastical world, and that was great. And so science fiction is very welcoming to people who otherwise might not be welcome. It's always been this way, even from the 1930s, and I think that's terrific. I love that, and because of course, you know, the people who were sort of, you know, nerds way back when are now like, you know, running billionaire companies, you know, or whatever. You know, it's like, it's good.
Look at me now. I sat around thinking about something and I turned that thing I was thinking about into a business and a life. Yeah,
it's cool. It's super cool. So, but I'm really thrilled to be making Space Command. I'm really thrilled to be sharing it now with my audience. You know, if people want to watch the first hour, they can watch it on Mr. Sci-Fi. We've even had a sneak preview of the second hour. We're going to have a sneak preview.
I saw that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really great stuff coming. You know, it's funny because I watch it over and over while working on it, but I can't wait to share it because it's so cool. And you know, and we're here. We've got our studio. We've got everything up and running. Got 14 spacesuits, and you know,
it's just 14. Not.
It's growing. But the fun part is that when I was a kid, I was given a Christmas present of a trip to the Star Trek set. I was on the set for the last episode they ever shot, Turnabout Intruder, and I met Nichelle Nichols when I was 10, and then now she's in Space Command. We shot a scene with her, and to have that come full circle, and I brought my scrapbook that I kept when I was 10 that included the letters she had written me and the photos she had signed to me, and to be able to show that to her on my set when we're shooting a scene with her all these years later was just, she signed my little scrapbook. It was so great. It was so great.
That is a huge full circle moment right there. Because she's, well, like you said, on your YouTube page, Mr. Sci-Fi.
Yes.
You guys got to check it out. I'm going to have links to everything right down there. Just right down there. Look down there. You'll see it. Click on it. And you have, like you said, the first hour, but you have a 10-minute preview of episode 2, and you have a trailer for episode 3.
Yes, and again, people can now order the Blu-rays, the DVDs with all of the. See, the cool thing is, one thing you can watch the first hour, you can watch the preview of the second hour on Mr. Sci-Fi, but if you want all these extras, I mean, behind-the-scenes interviews and panels from Comic-Con that we did, and on and on. I mean, all deleted scenes, alternate visual effects, just incredible stuff where you really can kind of crack open the hood, and commentaries by Elaine and myself and our cast, and you know, so much stuff, so many cool things, and you know, it's an honor to be part of this. It's an honor to be doing it. I love getting to the finish line where it's like, okay, now the world can see what we've been up to.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really fun. I mean, just today I was giving notes to my team on a weapon that emerges from this alien spaceship, this super weapon, and just talking about the design of how the pieces should move and things should come out and the energy should look. I mean, it gets very, very specific, and but how fun, you know. So,
well, I incredibly appreciate this. Well, about a lot of different shows that are coming up in movies is new universes to explore.
Yes.
Something that is original, that has its own history, its own future, its own happenings. Space Command is a brand new universe. It's not a fan film. It's funded by fans, but it's an original piece of work.
Yes,
and
it is.
I always love anything that introduces something new to me.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that, because it's, for me, it's like I would not go back to when I was working for the studios or the networks. That's not, it's like I was very lucky. I was very lucky. The executives I worked with were terrific. I got to write for Star Trek and DS9 and Babylon 5 and Sliders and on, you know, my credentials. But this is my happiest time. This is my best time. I'm fully realized creatively. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I'm in very direct dialogue with the fans and my audience, which I love. And I mean, when I go out in the world now, people recognize me. They go, Mr. Sci-Fi, you know, whether I'm in England or here, or someone would just call me from Moscow. You know, it's like, it's so cool. And you know, so I'm thrilled. And yes, Space Command is its own universe, but very much with a knowledge. Just like with Babylon 5, you could tell that Joe Straczynski really knew the genre. I mean, naming a character Alfred Bester, I mean, you know, you got to really know, you know, published science fiction to recognize that name. And, you know, so, but it's fun because the trick is it has to stand on its own. The characters and the stories have to work on their own. If you have never read a science fiction book, if you've never seen another science fiction series or movie, it has to work just cold right out of the gate. But for the fans who are fans of Blade Runner or fans of 2001 or whatever, when they see those little tiny grace notes, you know, those little things that it's like, wow, that's really, really fun. And, you know, so I love both of those things. And no, I'm very blessed, very, very blessed. I have no complaints.
Well, it's expressing the human condition. I mean, that's what sci-fi like this is. It's in a sci-fi surroundings, but it's really just human stories. Yes. You know, some artificial humans, maybe alien humans down the road, but but those always end up being human stories in some way or another.
Yes, yes, and I mean, it's, you know, it's just a great thing about my having Elaine in my life as my co-writer, director, producer, and we have our own individual projects. I'm sort of like the lead dog on Space Command, but she's, you know, she'll come in after I've written a draft and we'll start tweaking it. She always says, what are you getting at here? What's the meaning of this? What are you trying to say? You know, why should we care about these people? You know, and she makes sure that I go deeper into the characters, deeper into the moments, and really make sure that it has some meat on the bone, you know? And the fun part is sometimes you can write stuff, like, for instance, there's a great monologue that Bob Picardo does in the first hour of the pilot about losing his wife, how she died. And I wrote it as a monologue, and I didn't know if it was going to work. I really didn't know. And so I thought, okay, I'll give it to Bob and take a run at it. And then, of course, he makes it just magical. It's one of my favorite moments in the entire show. But literally, if he hadn't been able to pull it off, I would just have taken it out. But and that's again where having total power over everything is great. But also that's why I love collaborating, because I know to trust my actors. I know that they're going to come up with stuff that I hadn't envisioned that's better than what I envisioned. And in that case, he certainly did. He really was in that moment, and it really, really plays. And I loved being able to do that. It was magic.
Yeah, you have so many incredibly talented people in front of the camera, behind the camera, but in front of the camera, I mean, you got you had Mira, you got Bruce Boxleitner, the main star. I don't know because I haven't seen. I'm waiting to see more, but Ethan McDowell.
Yes.
And now fun to follow.
Yeah, he's on Doom Patrol as well. I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, and then to come, we've got James Hong from Blade Runner, John Hennigan, who's a very well-known wrestler, who's also in things like The Last Ship. We have Farhan Tahir, who was the Federation captain in JJ's. He's the one who gets skewered by the Romulan, and he's an Iron Man. We've got, just to come, Christina Moses from A Million Little Things. We've got Armin Shimmerman's coming into the show. He's now in
Bill Mumy,
of course, and Ethan Phillips is in the show, on and on. It's just like, it's like a convention, in a bottle.
Yeah, if you don't recognize at least half the cast, any sci-fi fan, then you're not as big of a sci-fi fan as you thought.
Yeah, Michael Harney from Project Blue Book and from For All Mankind, and Francois Chow from The Expanse. He plays UOPR Mao on The Expanse. So it just keeps going. As I meet more people, more actors, I just say, hey, I'll write a role for you.
Come on over. We'll get you on. You'll be part of Space Command.
Yes.
Well, Space Command is up and running. It's deep into the throes of creation, but we still need fan help. We need fan support. Of course, you can check out Mr. Sci-Fi on YouTube, but there's also Space Command, Kickstarter.com.
Yes, exactly. And again, we really are committed to getting to our target. It's Kickstarter, so it's all or nothing. So anything you can do, buying Blu-rays or getting an acting role or whatever, it helps enormously, and we're very, very grateful. And also, when we're up and shooting and everyone's vaccinated and it's all safe, a lot of our fans can come to the set, can watch us shoot the creatures or the alien ship, can really be part of it and have just the amazing experience I had with Star Trek when I was a kid. So it's great fun.
You have a great experience with Space Command.
Yeah,
you guys. Well, I want to thank you, Marc, for just talking about sci-fi.
Yeah, it's fun.
Being so knowledgeable as a fan and as someone that works in the industry, in the film, and just, I basically consider you a sci-fi guru.
Thanks. Well, I'll have to levitate. But again, it's because, and that's the one thing I was going to say a few minutes ago. With science fiction TV shows and movies that are really great, you can tell that the people loved doing it. They are not coming from cynicism. The shitty stuff, they are coming from cynicism. They're saying, well, how can we can steal from this and steal from that and cobble it together, and people will stand it. They'll throw down their dollars or what. But no. But I love Space Command. That's why I'm doing it. Roddenberry, Serling. I mean, they loved what they were doing. It was not ever from cynicism or a lack of trying. They made it work and it lasted. So I'm thrilled. Thank you for all the kind words. I really appreciate it.
Well, I can't wait to see more. I know anyone who's seen the pilot of Space Command wants more. Get this new universe. And from what I've seen in episode 2, a little bit episode 3, I'm like, wow, this is going somewhere.
Yes.
This is really, and it's stepped up too.
Yeah, we have plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to knock people's socks off. I mean, that when I decided to put out that 10 minutes from episode 2, it was like, there's a lot that happens in that 10 minutes. I mean, there's a lot, and that's just for starters. So yeah, people are going to love it. I think. Well, we're getting 97-98% thumbs up on pretty much all the Space Command stuff we've put out. So people love it. Millions of people are watching it and they love it. So so that's the name of the game. That's why I do it.
So it's sci-fi tested, viewer approved.
Yes.
Which
yes.
is a good way to go.
Egotastic FunTime, we're gonna have a great time. Egotastic FunTime, give me all your money. Give him all your money. You will find it funny. Just give me money. I love money. Give me all your 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 money.